Thank you all very much for joining us. I'm Steve Clemons. I'm with the New America Foundation and direct the American Strategy Program there. I work with my colleague Cheryl Schwenninger in also co-directing our economic growth program. I want to welcome our C-SPAN audience who are with us today and will be airing the entire morning program both later today and over the weekend for those of you who missed some sizzling tidbit that might get shared here. I want to thank our good friend John Bouton, the ambassador of the European Commission here, who's joined us, and we're thrilled to see you with us here as well. What our goal in this program today is to tease out some of the important issues that are unfolding in the American economy. Obviously, if you read any of the papers and say compare them to 6 months ago, there's a new element of pessimism. The R word, recession word, is being discussed more frequently. There are concerns about the subprime squeeze, the housing bubble, how to approach the economy, the level of the dollar, the trade deficit, and it's quite a, if you want to look at it, it can be looked at as quite a gloomy picture. We did a program, I think about 6 or 7 months ago, called Is the Sky Falling? I think it was called Will the Sky Fall? To be precise. And I say this because our friend Bernard Schwartz was very much a driver of that event. And we were looking at the questions then, and I would say to some degree, the level of pessimism in the press, the media, and whatnot has increased dramatically. But it takes us back to ask us about clear fundamentals of the American economy and how to approach it. And what is fascinating is that if you also look at some of the other major stewards of the economy, Lawrence Summers in the past, I won't call him a steward, but at least a commentator. We have a lot of other commentators of the economy today, Steve Pearlstein and Zach Carabello, who has a piece in the Wall Street Journal, but Martin Wolf of the Financial Times commentary, both of them, in a way, Summers and Wolf are converging around the fact that not only are there potential monetary approaches for dealing with some of the economic problems being seen, but perhaps fiscal approaches. And one of the interesting things we've been trying to work out at the New American Foundation is to what degree public infrastructure, reinventing the country, if you will, from a public infrastructure viewpoint, needs to be or ought to be part of an economic response package to some of these issues. And it's brought some odd bedfellows together, and I think we're going to have that today. So we're very pleased to have a really great lineup of people, and we're going to try to, as much as we can, make this a conversation after each of the folks that we've asked to spend a little bit more time in focusing on parts of the punctuation in this story, and we'll have a conversation with all of you in 2 segments. One, focusing on, the title, How Hard Will the Fall Be? The impact of the unwinding housing and credit bubbles on the economy. And then in about an hour and a half or so, we'll have Shaking It Off, what role for public investment and Fed action restoring growth. Our goal is not to come up with a solution or a consensus. Our role is to really tease out the different views and to think about where there might be a nexus of interests. Let me stop there for a moment and ask Bernard Schwartz, who's been with us and helped us support much of this program, and he's been part of the ideas driving process of these sets of inquiries that we're engaged in. He's helped us launch our economic growth program and has also been, I think, at the forefront of trying to get members of Congress and the U.S. government to think more creatively about what's needed to engineer a new era of public investment and public infrastructure investment and growth in the country. So please welcome the chairman of BLS Investments, former chairman and CEO of Loral Space, Bernard Schwartz.
I welcome you all here today and express appreciation for the fact that you come here to hear what I think is a very relevant and timely discussion about what is important to us from an economic, policy, fiscal point of view, investment point of view. I think the timing of your choice of this meeting is a very important one for the country. I also would like to express appreciation to the New America Foundation, who have been, over a long period of time, identified the real issues that face a democracy in the 21st century and have been exploring those from a point of view of academic and practical political assessment of what has to be done as we move forward in our society. So I appreciate the sponsorship and I appreciate you putting this group together, which is very important. Why is this subject so relevant? Generally speaking, there is a consensus in America that public investment and infrastructure investment is a very important subject, and there's a consensus about what has to be done. And that's on all sides of the political spectrum and all sides of within each of the major parties. The infrastructure investment or public investment has been a historic tradition of America. Most of the important things that have been done in terms of great advances, fiscal advances, since the Republic started from 1803, have been initiated by the executive in successive governments on both sides of the political aisle, and we owe much of our capital structure today in the United States, which is the most advanced in the world, to the fact that the executive branch has been a leader in initiating those projects, and it's been very successful for them. So as we look around a decaying physical structure in America today, and there's evidence almost everywhere, whether in New York City where a pipeline explodes in the middle of a pedestrian traffic, or a bridge falls, or you wait 2 hours or an hour and a half getting to your airport, or you are unable to do anything but take a high carbon use transportation unit because we don't have high-speed rail in the population centers of the United States where you have a Katrina-like disaster on the Gulf. The capital structure of the United States is in sad repair, need for repair. The experts would say that there's something like $1.6 billion worth of backlog of infrastructure investment that is needed today. And that's only an expression of the fact that prior to 1972, the average public investment, infrastructure investment in the United States, was about 3% of GDP. And since that time, it's been two-thirds of that, 2%. And the accumulated deficit is only what we're living today in terms of infrastructure that hurts our productivity, hurts our capability to compete in an international way, but also hurts our quality of life in this country. Infrastructure investment also has the added quality right now of perhaps addressing, or to help address, the imbalance of the spreading of the wealth of the United States, because we all recognize that the middle class has been hurt by not being able to keep up with the benefits of the economic expansion that we've had over the last 15 years. I don't believe that the middle class has had less wealth, or is enjoying less wealth, but I think relatively speaking, they have not kept up at the pace that other segments of the society have. We recognize that as an imbalance. We should do something about that. We recognize also that overseas competition is taking away middle-class jobs and productive jobs in the United States. And we have not yet put the middle class back into the productive jobs that we want, even though we enjoy a very low unemployment rate in this country, and I think that's an important part of our strength. So there are things in our society that need addressing. There are things in the infrastructure and capital structure that need addressing. And infrastructure investment, public investment, seems to be an idea whose time is coming, because we recognize we have to do something. Now, ordinarily, if we were a business, or if we were a state government, or a city government, we would have two budgets in the United States. We'd have a capital budget, and we would have an operating budget. And fiscal responsibility would be to make sure that the operating budget is in balance, that your income matches your expenditures. But there would be a recognition that your capital budget is often funded by financing, because the benefits of that investment accrue over are realized over a long period of time in the future. And you, in fact, pay off the debt by the increased productivity or value that the investment brings to you. It's a perfect balance. The United States does not have that mechanism. And it doesn't have that mechanism because there's some natural law that prevents it, or because there is some constitutional prevention of that. It lacks it only because there is a lack of political will to address the problem. And when you speak to those people who are afraid of doing that, they say that Congress or the American people will be out of control. If we had a capital budget, we would not be able to control or regulate or discipline those expenditures, and you would have a continuous investment in bridges that go nowhere. I reject that argument completely. I can't believe that something that would be good for us is defeated because we would not have the discipline to use the tool correctly. We don't throw out the hammer because sometimes you hit your thumbnail. You would use the hammer more wisely. And so there should be an increasing impetus to, hopefully, a capital budget and an operating budget, but until that occurs, we are continuing our deficit for all the ills, the infrastructure, capital infrastructure deficit, for all the ills that come out of that. Now, the purpose that the function of this discussion today is I hope will highlight the need for an investment and the need for, or the question as to whether or not our society, our economy can afford an investment in infrastructure at this time. We started this dialogue maybe a year or two ago, and during the time when the stock market was doing well, and there was no question that the economy was doing well, the conversation had a lot more impetus than it does over the last month or so. And the reason for that is that there is common recognition, and increasingly common recognition, that the world and the United States has been enduring and benefiting from an enormous growth that started more than 15 years ago. It's a long-term cycle that started somewhere around 1950s or thereabout, in which more income, greater distributed around the world, more investment, new technologies, globalization have all blended to an extraordinarily facile, healthy, robust, resilient economy. And one of the indications that you could look to is that since 1946, recessions that are part of, inbred into a capitalistic system, a market system, will have from time to time adjustments, call it what you will, recessions. But since 1950, those recessions in the United States have been further apart, more shallow, and much shorter in time. There's a reason for that, I think, and that's because of the continuing wealth that's being created, has been distributed, and has made each of the national economies better. But globalization over the last 15 years has done even a stronger job in terms of diversifying the investments, diversifying the risks, and made each of our national organizations, economies, our own as well, and international economies blended together into a much stronger, more robust economic force that is expected to continue into the indefinite future. Now, we're having the debate today, however, is, see, I told you, nothing goes up forever. We're going to pay for the excesses that we're having now. We can't have a fiscal imbalance, and we can't have a trade imbalance, and we can't have a savings imbalance in this country without paying the piper. I reject all of those arguments. The fact is that it's really a question of calculus. The savings deficit in this country is just the way you compute the savings rate. For example, in savings, the way it's computed, investments made in education in the United States is counted as a dissaving, which is just the opposite of what most of us regard that kind of investment. So to bring it back to the current argument here, the issue is not whether or not the economy can afford infrastructure investment now. And we'll hear a lot about that, whether or not we can afford it. I think that the important thing is to recognize that we cannot afford to avoid making an investment in our infrastructure and expect to be a world-class power that serves the majority of our people. And the issue of, in my judgment, is how much of a negative impact, if at all, an infrastructure investment would be that would prevent the political will from focusing on what needs to be done. And I invite you to look at the Dodd-Hagel bill that was introduced by Senator Dodd and Senator Hagel this last session, the current session, I should say, that addresses the infrastructure investment and the economy, the economic issues, by creating a new investment bank that would solve the financing. There are other efforts in the House as well, so that we are looking at an environment in which there's greater recognition and more consensus that infrastructure investment is not only recognized as a need, but it's recognizable as a solvable problem. And if we have the political will, we get on with that job. I expect that we're going to have a lot of opinions spoken to today, addressing all of these issues on all sides of this very complex issue. I am here today just to make sure that the optimistic view of America's economic strength is not getting short shift here. And I don't want the argument of Larry Summers, whom I have great respect for and is a good friend, see, I told you so. The world is going to hell in a basket, and just look at the current headline. To prevail without some protest from my side of the optimistic aisle. Thank you for being here today. I expect this is going to be a very robust conversation.